This is Oscar Bevis for the Stomping Ground, powered by Wow Hydrate and available on DAZN. Charlie Sims, thank you very much for having me today.
Well, you're a hard man to get, Oscar, because you and Charlie are just living the life. Dubai here, like travelling here, you're very hard people to pin down.
I've been told this, and I can only apologise, but I had to make sure I was back in the country for huge boxing on Friday night. Mate, I said this to you when you messaged me yesterday. Very exciting. I've seen it plastered all over social media, which only can be a good thing considering the amount of boxing I do get on my feed. There's an excitement about Friday night, a real excitement.
Definitely. I think we're doing something different. I think when we was coming into this, a lot of people thought we were going to compete and be part of the small hall kind of promoters. But I think what we've done is we've produced something that very much bridges the gap. We've got a really great product. Huge boxing and Origins starting this Friday. Brilliant lineup. All of these fighters that are participating, pretty much all of them, have boxed on DAZN or TNT. So we're very fortunate that we've got a brilliant lineup. And yeah, I think the momentum's building now. We're starting to see a lot of excitement to the event. Tickets are flying, and I expect it to be packed at York Hall on Friday night.
Yeah, just going off what you said at the press conference, it seems like you went to LA and had like a light bulb moment. Do you know when people go travelling and they say they find themselves? I feel like that's what you made LA sound like.
Yeah, it was an epiphany.
That's the word
I was in LA. I was kind of, working on a project out there, and you spent a time in a very creative place. People creating movies, TV shows, writing books, and I love the creative space so much that I really wanted to be operating in that space, and I just paired it up with what I love, and that's boxing. And I think boxing really, when you look at it, we do these brilliant events, but there's not much storytelling, Oscar. Like, it's really, I've seen some brilliant fights recently, high-level fights, undisputed fights, and I can barely tell you anything about them personally, on a personal level. So I wanted to create a platform really that showcases boxing and brilliant fighters, but also brilliant stories as well. And as you see today, people are sitting here and they feel comfortable with telling their own story, and I love it.
Obviously, people know your father, legendary trainer Tony. You said you're so passionate about boxing. I speak to people who say when they were younger they were pushed towards boxing because of their father. Some people who say that actually when they were pushed towards it when they were younger, it kind of drew them away a little bit. But just because your father's so big in the boxing scene, that isn't the reason you're here. You are seriously passionate about the sport of boxing, regardless.
100%. Like, boxing is my favourite sport, always has been. I did box when I was younger. My dad did actually make me box. I boxed for Repton for a bit, and then I moved over to...
Any good?
I was all right. I think the problem is I was probably a bit soft, to be honest. But
I was going to say, you were a pretty boy, right?
Yeah, I was a bit soft. Yeah. But I was technically all right. But I think, I was a bit of a late developer, a bit small for the weight, and I just got bashed about a little bit.
So like excuses to me.
Yeah,
small for the weight.
I think they're good excuses, to be honest, because I probably would have ended up getting filled in. But did box a bit, so I know what it's like. Been there, done it, got in the ring, and just had to try and find my own feet in boxing. Like, I think when you come from a pedigree where your father's one of the best coaches in the country, arguably one of the best coaches in the world, you have to try and figure out who you are in all of this. And worked with him originally doing a bit of training side, realised I was never going to be a trainer, then went on to the management side, worked very closely with him for a decade, did my apprenticeship, and then I was like, do you know what? I think promoting's where I really want to go with this. So yeah, I got my promoter's license a couple of years ago, never used it, and it just felt like it was the right time. This concept came around, I sat down, I wrote it out, wrote what huge boxing would look like, the 3 chapters to it, and we've just ran with it. And since we've been doing it, I've loved the process. It's been a bit challenging, some late nights, some early mornings, not a lot of sleep, but it's brilliant. This is the best sport in the world, and that's why we're all sitting here today, because we love it.
Yeah, you talk about having done all the different sides of boxing, and this is where you kind of find your feet. Even I know from doing the media stuff, there's a lot behind the scenes that people watching this interview, people who will be in attendance or watch on Friday night, don't see. There's a lot more to the sport than just 2 people getting in a ring, fighting for a ranking and fighting for a title. there's so many little corners, and it's quite a difficult sport to navigate. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, especially to the promotional side. Like, just getting 2 people in the ring on fight night will be a huge achievement, even if it's just for a 4-rounder, because honestly, the matchmaking process, any sort of title sanctioning process, working with the board, flying opponents in, negotiating, putting the event on, health and safety, you name it, I've been through it. And I've learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot more about it, but as a manager, but actually I've learned a lot about it, and I love it. I've just absolutely loved it. Frank Smith messaged me maybe a couple of days ago, and he said, "Hey mate, are you okay? Do you need anything from me?" And I said, "No, I'm all good, thanks, appreciate it." And he said, "Are you enjoying it?" And I was like, "Mate, this is the greatest job in the world. You're literally creating you've painted a picture of what your perfect boxing event would look like, and you get to bring it to life." So yeah, I feel like I'm in the best job in the world right now.
I thought you was about to say that when Frank messaged you saying, "Do you want anything?" you were going to reply to him and go, "Yeah, a couple of months ago, if you would have said that, it would have been a little bit nicer." Mate, it sounds like a lot of stress, but I know that the end product that we're going to get on Friday is going to be wicked. Obviously, you mentioned Frank, and we know Tony, the Matchroom gym. We know the close association. Matchroom are on the fight poster as well. A lot of the Matchroom prospects. I guess Matchroom assistance gives a nice little leg up, and there's fighters that people know and would have seen on platforms like DAZN. So that Matchroom collaboration is a big part of what you do.
100%, and the Matchroom collaboration wasn't originally part of the plan. It was just that we were going to do our own show. We've got our own fighters with George, Jimmy, Maisie. Them guys were spearheading it, and we sat down with Matchroom and said, like, look, we're going to do the show in December. We're just running it by you. And they said to us, actually, you know what? I think that's a good idea. We would really love to put Paddy Donovan on and Shannon Ryan. So that's kind of where the collaboration first initiated. Paddy Donovan obviously couldn't make it for this event, but we wish him all the best, and I'm sure he's going to have a huge 2025. But Shannon Ryan, what a lovely girl. Just getting to know her, spending time with her, great team around her. She seems pumped. I think that little loss that she took in the summer for the British and Commonwealths really spurred her on to do bigger and better things. So absolutely love spending time with her, getting to know her story. So yeah, Matchroom have been great and very supportive, and Queensberry too. Haven't always.
Say everyone's friends now, right?
Haven't always
if
had.
If you had started Huge Boxing 2 years ago, this Origin show would not have Carol Talma. Let's face it.
I think you're probably right.
Or there'd be a few angry eyes in the back of your head if it did have Carol.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that relationship between Matchroom and Queensberry has definitely helped, and it's not a relationship I've always had. So sat down with George Warren recently, sat down with Francis at Southern Area Awards recently. We had a really good chat. They obviously had a good think about what I was doing and the opportunity that I presented them, and they rang me and said, "Can Carol come on the show?" So Carol's a brilliant talent. I think the biggest question is, where has he been and what's he been doing? He was absolutely one of the biggest rising stars in British boxing at one point. A little bit inactive, but I'm super excited to see him back, and I'm really excited to see him on our show, because I think this is going to be the beginning of a new chapter for him, really.
Yeah. In terms of the Matchroom and Queensberry collaboration that we've seen, mainly down to, of course, His Excellency in Riyadh season, and the fact that finally, somehow, I don't know how it took this long, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren were even in the same room. As someone who's been quite close to the Matchroom unit, like you said, what have you made of seeing all of this?
Yeah, I mean,
it took me a couple of months to. I feel like it was AI at first. To just piece it together.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you're seeing two people that famously had a huge rivalry for decades, and now they're kind of sitting in the same room, laughing and joking, having lunch and dinner together. So it's quite interesting. I think it's been good for boxing. I think we've seen some brilliant fights out of it, and I think ultimately that's the most important thing. What's good for the sport? How do we elevate the sport? And sometimes you have to come together, even if you do disagree on certain things, come together and put it right. And I think it's been brilliant for the sport. Obviously, His Excellency kind of initiated that, and he's done a brilliant. He's had a brilliant couple of years for the sport. Driving those big fights that we just couldn't see happen for political or sometimes financial reasons. He's brought everybody together. So I hope to be spending more time with Eddie, Frank, and His Excellency, and hopefully as we build and we do stuff, especially as that new tournament's coming out that I see was announced recently, the Grand Prix tournament. I think Georges Lidard, Jimmy Sains, Maisie Rose, like all of these fighters would be perfect additions to that. So I'd love to sit down and discuss that with them.
Yeah, that tournament that we saw at the WBC convention sounds, although it's early, really promising. Although I will say one thing, maybe horrible of me, I do quite miss the Frank and Eddie back and forths a little bit. A little bit of theatre on fight week. You'd be going up to either Frank or Eddie and being like, I know one of you's going to go in on the other one.
Do you know who we're seeing now, though, that I'm seeing more regularly, is Frank Smith and Ben Shalom. That seems to be like the new rivalry.
To be fair, they've even both kind of initiated I wouldn't say initiated it, they've kind of both mentioned the potential of actually fighting. Like in LA Riyadh season, I think Ben said, I need to get in the ring with Frank Smith. So huge boxing.
Yeah, huge boxing.
Frank Smith versus Ben Shalom.
Huge boxing. Come and sit down, tell your story, tell us why.
You mentioned the 3 stages, so it was Origins, Destiny, Legacy. So that doesn't mean 3 shows, right? That means 3 segments. So the Origin shows, we're going to see more of these leading into kind of early 2025.
100%. We're looking at first week of April for the next Origin show, and I think these fighters here are the perfect fighters to do it with. Georges Lidard, Jimmy Sains, for example. They need to break through Origins. You know, it's part of a series. They need to break through it to move into Destiny. Destiny kind of takes you into a different level. You're on your way to kind of conquering domestic titles, more international titles, and then Legacy, as we all know, is you put your name in the history books. You know, that's your kind of world championship, or you're stamping your name in the history books forever, essentially. So that's what Legacy is. I think with every great story, there's a beginning, middle, and end. And I think since my time in boxing, I've watched so many brilliant fighters come through and then obviously move on and retire. And there's a new cycle that comes through and moves on. So right now, we're working with a new cycle. We've got some brilliant prospects and contenders. And this is going to be a journey. And I really, really want to see these guys go through that Origin series, break through, go into Destiny, and then let's have those big nights, those legacy nights at the O2 Arena, Wembley Stadium, Tottenham, all those kind of places where we can fill up and bring those big nights back to British boxing.
Yeah, I think the Matchroom gym's a perfect example of that. And again, I'll use kind of myself. When I started in boxing, I used to go down the Matchroom, and it would be Conor Benn, who obviously was at a different stage of his career, Ted Cheeseman, who gave us some of the most entertaining nights ever, Martin J. Ward, Craig Richards was in the gym at the time, John Ryder when he was almost climbing towards and chasing the Canelo fight. And now you look in there and you've got some of the guys you got on this show. I think the Matchroom gym is a perfect embodiment of kind of a cycle going out and a cycle going in.
Yeah, and actually we had a brilliant conversation on the Huge Talk podcast with Jimmy Sains, Darren Barker and Tony Sims, and brought it up a little bit in the press conference what it was like for them just to sit down and have a conversation. But Darren explained it perfectly about the cycles, because when Darren was fighting, John Ryder was the young guy on the come up, and they would fly John Ryder in to be Darren Barker's sparring partner for his world title fights. And then John Ryder went on to have a brilliant career, you know, fought the best in Canelo Alvarez for Undisputed, and Jimmy was the one sparring John Ryder for that fight out in LA. And it just shows you that cycles that people kind of come. There was a point where Darren was young, he ended up becoming the senior, retired. John came through, become the senior, retired. Now Jimmy's coming through. So we're going to see Jimmy's rise, and we're going to see his journey. But I think the special thing about Jimmy is now we have a platform where we can help really tell that story. Like, we just don't have the content or, you know, any sort of storytelling moments from John Ryder's early days and Darren Barker's early days, only from when they got to the top. So the beauty of this platform is now we're going to see it from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for Friday night. I think it's going to be really, really good. And of course, at the iconic York Hall, I know a lot of promoters have that on their tick list to promote there. You're just turning up and doing it show one. York Hall ticked.
Yeah, I mean, look, we looked at all the options and like it just made perfect sense. I think for me also a bit personal, like I remember my dad taking me to York Hall when I was a kid, and like just being able to get access to the small hall shows and walking behind backstage in those tiny little changing rooms, and just York Hall felt so right. And I think for Origins, origins meaning the beginning of something. It was the beginning of something for me, but also seems to be the beginning of something for a lot of other people on the show. Most of these fighters haven't actually boxed at York Hall. It hasn't really been a venue that Matchroom have really used over the last couple of years. So I've had a lot of Shannon Ryan, George Liddard, Jimmy Sains. I don't think Maisie's boxed there either, to be honest with you. So
coming out of Ripton, and she's yet to box at York Hall.
Just round the corner, and they're coming forward saying, this is the first time we're going to box in. We're actually very excited about it.
Mate, can't wait. Like I said, going to be really good. Final one. This time next week we'll be deep into a fight week for Riyadh. Fury Usyk 2, where's your money?
Brilliant fight. I was at the first one, and
you going out for?
Probably not. I'm probably going to need a break, to be honest. But I will be watching it on TV, and brilliant fight. The first one, I thought Fury did brilliant in the first half, but Usyk was just excellent, wasn't he? Just figured him out. Real elite level fighter. Nearly took him out. I want to back Fury for the second one. I want to. I think he can figure it out. I think he can. I think he got a little bit complacent. He took it a little bit light, as I think he felt comfortable in the first few rounds. But he just seemed to have got drained as the fight went on. Got caught with a couple of big shots. So I'd like to think that Fury could do it, but it's a tough ask. Usyk is an elite fighter, and I don't think anybody would be surprised if we see the same result.